Welcome back to Beneath the Long Man's Feet. It seems a long time since I've posted a video here for you all. I missed the equinox as far as spring equinox, that is, as far as a poem or a story. So I thought it's time I did something here just to let you know I'm still around. And we're approaching Beltane, so I'm sure I'll do something a bit later towards Beltane. But this isn't a Beltane story. It is a short story that isn't mine. It's an ancient story called The Buddha and the Hare. Now, a while ago, a friend of mine, Eva, this is for you, I hope you are watching. She asked me if I know why hares stare at the moon, why they moon gaze. Now, I don't know the biological or zoological or whatever the correct term is, reason why they do it, but I do know why hares stare at the moon. And I'm going to tell you that now in this short story called The Buddha and the Hare. And it goes a bit like this. One day the Buddha was up there in Nirvana on his cloud looking at all the world, and he was at great peace with himself. But he was a little bit bored, if it's truth, and he decided he would go back down to the earth for a while and see the creatures and the animals and the flora and the fauna of this beautiful land around here. Now, the hare, she got wind of this, and the hare, she was the most friendliest animal in the whole of the forest. So she ran around making sure that all the other animals knew that the Buddha was coming and made sure that they all gave the Buddha something when he got here to thank him for his blessing and visiting them on that day. And she ran around hither and thither and thither and thither, making sure that everybody knew the Buddha was coming and they would give the Buddha something. Then the hare, she ran off to wait in the edge of the forest. And the Buddha, he arrived. And he walked through the land and the vales and the dales and the trees. And he met all of the animals. And all of the animals, as the hare had asked them, gave the Buddha a little token of their appreciation. They might have been a feather. It might have been a scale. It might have been a little trinket that the birds had borrowed from someone else. It just might have been anything. A little stone, a pebble that meant something to them, an egg from their nest that they didn't need. All of the animals gave the Buddha a little something to thank the Buddha for coming down to earth and blessing them with his presence. And then the Buddha decided he would carry on his walk through the forest. And he did, and he walked merrily along, and the hare, she followed him quietly behind, not quite making herself known, for she was quite shy and quite awed to be in the presence of the Buddha, and couldn't quite bring herself at that point to come and introduce herself. Well, the Buddha was walking along through the forest tracks, singing to himself, and then he suddenly stopped, and he said, "Oh, I think I'm lost. I think I've lost the path." Now, for the Buddha to admit that they had lost the path, I'm sure you will agree that is quite strange and not something that you will hear very often. So it was at this point that the kindly hare leapt forward and said, "I can help you, Buddha," because she suddenly realized that in all her running around making sure the other animals had given something to the Buddha, she, the hare, hadn't prepared anything for the Buddha. So she thought, this is my chance to help him. "I can help you," she said. "I can help you find the path again. I know these woods very well," said the hare. And the Buddha looked down at the hare and smiled at the kindly hare and said, "Why, thank you, Lady Hare. That would be most welcome. Come, walk. We'll talk as we walk." "That would be brilliant," said the hare. "Thank you so much." And as they started walking, there came a very strange rumbling. And the hare realized that it was coming from the Buddha's tummy. Rumble, 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 grumble, and she realized that the Buddha was hungry. "Oh, I'm feeling a bit hungry," said the Buddha, tapping his ample tummy. Oh, I can help you with that," said the hare, and she ran hither and thither and thither and whither and all over the place, picking sticks up and making a nice little fire, and then she lit the fire till they had a roaring little fire going in order to cook the Buddha some tea before he went back to Nirvana. But then the hare realized she had nothing to cook the Buddha. She had made the fire and made this promise that she would feed him, and she had nothing to cook him. What could she do? "I know," said the hare. "Mr. Buddha," she said, "I will feed you myself. A man such as you needs to be fed, and I will give you my flesh, and you can feed on me." And she took a few steps back from the fire, and then she took a running jump and leapt into the air to land on the fire to cook herself for the Buddha's tea. Now the Buddha was very, very hungry, but he wasn't heartless. And no way was he going to let this hare sacrifice herself for his hunger. So before the hare landed on the fire, he grabbed her by the ears and swung her around and hoiked her into the air as hard as he could away from the fire. And he hoiked her so hard and so fast that the hare flew high into the sky. Up, up, up she went past the clouds, past the stars, and bang, she slapped into the moon. And that's where she landed, stuck onto the moon. And the Buddha looked up and said, "For your helpfulness and your willingness to sacrifice yourself for me, I now put you above all the animals here, and they will forever look up to you from your high point in the moon." And you know, they do. Because if you look at the moon now, you will see the shape. Some say it's a rabbit, but you now know it's actually a hare sitting on the moon. And all the other hares are so impressed by the hare being put into the moon by the Buddha that when the full moon comes out, they all stand by the edge of the meadow and stare at the hare in the moon, thinking one day, perhaps it could be them. And they stare until the moon disappears, because they are in awe of the wonderful hare who would sacrifice herself for everybody else. That is why hares stare at the moon. It is, really. You have to believe me, it's true. And if anybody tells you different, let them tell you the real reason. Well, thank you very much for listening. Eva, I hope you enjoyed that. That is for you, as I say, a short story. Promise to tell you one day. It's a beautiful day here. I'll be back around Beltane with a Beltane poem or story, who knows. But I'll definitely be back a bit sooner than I have been. But for now, do let me know what you thought of that short story, The Buddha and the Hare, an ancient story. It was my telling of an ancient story, not my story, as you probably heard it in different forms already. But it's always good to hear from you beneath the long man's feet, Facebook or YouTube, whichever you decide to use. But for now, as always, I bid you all hail and farewell.